everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Tonight we are going to whip up a batch of my sourdough snickerdoodle cookies, and then I'm going to laminate and shape 2 traditional sourdough loaves to bake up tomorrow, and then we're going to prep the dough for some sourdough English muffins. So let's start by getting our cookie dough made. So we are going to start with a cup of softened butter. And softened butter works the best because it's going to cream the easiest. Cold butter will not cream as well. Add this in here. And then I'm going to give my butter just a quick little kind of whisk through so that it can start breaking up a little bit before I add in our sugar. Just makes it a little bit easier to combine. And this dough isn't a super dense dough, so you can do it with a hand mixer. You can also do it with a paddle stand. Okay, we are going to add in 1 1/3 cup of granulated sugar and then 1/3 cup of brown sugar. So I've got 1 cup, and we're going to add 1/3 cup more. Now this makes quite a bit of snickerdoodles. Now I don't make my snickerdoodles super huge, but this does make a good amount. So there's 1/3 cup. So 1 1/3 cup of granulated. And then we're going to use 1/3 cup of brown sugar. And we're going to just cream those together until the butter and the sugar are kind of one cohesive mixture. And again, room temperature butter is going to cream much easier than cold butter. So we'll give it a good mix around. And then we will add in 1 egg and 1 yolk. And then our sourdough discard. Now we kind of have our sugar and our butter is all kind of one base for it. We're going to add in 1 egg plus 1 yolk. So you don't want to use all of the whites for it because it will make it too wet and too runny. So just that yolk to give it that nice kind of richness to it. There we go. So we got our egg and our yolk. And we'll add in our sourdough discard. We need 1/2 cup of our sourdough discard. So I'm going to just scrape it in there. I happen to have perfectly 1/2 cup left over from lunchtime, where we used about 1 cup of it to make our pumpkin muffins. So we're going to use this rest of our discard. And then we're going to give this a good kind of mixture until it's all creamed together. Okay. And turn it up just 1 notch. Beautiful. Now we are going to add in our spices, vanilla, and baking soda. And then last we'll add in our flour. And then we'll make a cinnamon sugar mixture, which is what we'll roll each of our little snickerdoodles in. Let me grab a measuring spoon over here. Okay. So we need a teaspoon of baking soda. And then 2 teaspoons of cream of tartar.
Yeah, a couple comments that you're on late tonight.
I am. We ended up, I was gonna cook dinner at home tonight, and then plans changed. My family, we all decided to go out to eat. Some of my siblings were in town, and of course my kids and their cousins were getting together. So plans changed last minute, but I'm cooking up some snacks for tomorrow. I'm prepping up some English muffins for them and homemade bread to have tomorrow, since we're starting to get the whole kind of crew in on it. So kind of what I'll be doing a lot this week, prepping up for the morning breakfasts and snacks, because we've got like close to 50 people this week. So we're gonna add in a teaspoon of salt, and then 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. Now we're gonna also be using some more cinnamon later when we roll it in, but 2 teaspoons are going in the dough now. So 1, 2, and then we're gonna add in a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And we're gonna cream all of this together, and then we'll add our flour in, and we'll have the base of our cookie dough done. Mix this in.
You have a question? What kind of streaming schedule for tomorrow and this week?
So tomorrow we'll do a breakfast stream in the morning. We'll cook up our English muffins that we're prepping tonight, and we'll bake up our bread. And then I'll make a couple other little breakfast things to go with it so that I can bring it over to my parents' house in the morning. And then we'll do a late night tomorrow night as well, which is going to be prepping for tomorrow, making another snack for the next day, because I guarantee you all these cookies will be gone by the end of the night tomorrow night. And we're going to be making a cake tomorrow night, because we'll be celebrating my sister's birthday the next day, so I'm making her a cake. So I guess that's the thing. So tomorrow will be a late night as well, probably around this time, maybe a little bit sooner. We'll see. I'm not sure why I popped these out. But that's kind of be our schedule tomorrow. And then I think Wednesday will be a similar one, with Wednesday night doing a little bit of prep for Thanksgiving. And then Thanksgiving, I will be making my cinnamon rolls in the morning, so I'll be doing that. And then we will try to take a little videos throughout today of our Thanksgiving kind of feast. But I will be at my parents' house cooking that, so we won't be live streaming that there. And then that's as far as I know. Our plans are always evolving in this house. You know, it's already changed 1,000 times since people come in, because nobody can make up their mind what we're going to be doing then. So it's kind of chaos, but we thrive in chaos. Okay, we're going to add 2½ cups of flour, and just good old all-purpose flour. So I've got 1, 2, and 1/2 cups of flour. And we're going to whip this together, and then we're going to mix together 1/3 cup of sugar with 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, and that's what we're going to roll our cookie dough in, and then we'll bake them up. And then we'll work on making our dough for our English muffins, because that sits, you make it, and then it sits on the counter overnight. And then I'll kind of stretch it out in the morning and cut them into shape and let them rise a little bit longer, and then we'll cook them up on our griddle. And I will say, homemade English muffins are so good and so easy. Okay. I almost have this all mixed up. Perfect. So here is our sourdough snickerdoodle dough. And it will have a slight tack to it, but it's not so sticky that you can't work with it. Let's get all of those out. And then I'm gonna get a small little bowl so we can mix our sugar and our cinnamon together to roll them in, because that is like the key to getting that little extra pop of flavor. So I'm gonna put my flour over here because we're gonna need that for shaping our sourdough. Okay, so for this we just need, you don't need a whole lot of sugar to roll them in. A little goes a long way. Now, if you don't want to get down to the bare bones, you can always add up to a half a cup, but just know that you're gonna be throwing it away because you don't need that much to roll it in.
Can you use almond flour?
You know, I've never done it with almond flour, and it's one of those things that it's really tricky to kind of sub almond flour in for all-purpose flour on some things, especially where you need the hydration in it. If you're trying to go gluten-free, I would try one of those mixes that has a combination of in it, just because almond flour doesn't really absorb the same way that all-purpose does, so it might be too runny for it on there. I don't know why I'm opening this up. I need cinnamon, not baking soda. And then we're gonna add in 2 teaspoons of cinnamon to our little sugar mixture here. So 1, 2. Now sometimes I will sub out in this recipe, I'll do pumpkin pie spice instead of cinnamon for a little bit more of that pumpkin pie spice flavoring to it, which is very similar but slightly different, and they're both delicious. So you can always kind of change it up as well. Okay, I'm just giving it a little bit of a mix here. So now we've got our cinnamon sugar mixture. I've got my baking sheet with my parchment paper on it because baking on parchment paper just works so much better. And I'm gonna grab like a gumball size, and we're gonna roll it in our cinnamon sugar. You're gonna coat it like that, and we'll place it right here on our baking sheet. Now my oven is preheated to 400 degrees. So we're gonna bake these for just 9 minutes at 400. And these are like a soft and chewy cookie. They're not hard or crunchy. They're just really lovely. They have a nice puff in them from the kind of the egg and the egg yolk and the baking soda. And then of course the sourdough discard. So a little roll. In there. And that is gonna give you almost a little like cinnamon crinkle cut on the outside. I'm actually gonna do 5 rows of 3. Now you can always make them a little bit smaller. Sometimes I do, depending on how many I want to go through. But it's always bigger to make them, easier to make them a little bit bigger because you have to do a little less work.
Do you ever use cookbooks for cooking?
You know, I do have a couple of cookbooks, but the recipes that I use in those cookbooks, I've pretty much kind of memorized by heart, and kind of tweaked over the years to make them perfect the way I like them. So I don't really use cookbooks anymore. I always had I have like the classics, like the Fannie Farmer's cookbook and, you know, Gourmet cookbook and Julia Child's. I have those cookbooks and I've kind of tweaked the recipes over the years from them. But unless I am making something that I have never made before, or something that I have made very infrequently, most of the time I just need to know the ingredients and then I kind of know how to do it all for it. Or I just kind of explore based on what I remembers in a dish. So I really, one of my favorite things to do is like when I go out to eat, I like to order something new that I've never had before. And then knowing the ingredients that are listed on like the menu, I like to recreate it based on like the flavors and that pop out in it. So I really love doing that. Because I feel like once you kind of understand the basics of cooking, recreating is really just about understanding the palate and things that come together. And it's not as difficult as people think. It just takes like practice and fine-tuning your palate over time. Okay. I'm Get these guys done. Snickerdoodles are one of my sister's favorite cookies. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to make these, since she'll be in town. And then we will work on, I think we'll whip up our English muffin recipe, which is super easy and super simple. And then I've got 2 of my loaves that we need to shape up. I was deciding whether I wanted to do an inclusion in one, but I feel like the traditional sourdough loaf is just so universal. You can have it sweet, you can have it savory, depending on what you put on it. So I was like, that I think will be a good addition. Okay. We'll get a few more rolled out. Now these do not spread out super thin or anything like that. They actually kind of make a nice little puff-up dome and then flatten out when they cool on there, so you don't have to worry about them running too much. But I always like to give ample space between them, just in case. Okay. And when I say this makes a lot of cookies, it definitely makes, depending on what size, around 3 dozen to 4 dozen if you go a little bit smaller. Okay, so right now we've got our 15 cookies here. I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse, and then we're going to pop these in the oven. And these are going to bake for 9 minutes at 400. Make sure your oven is preheated and has been there for a while. I find that having it preheated and at your temperature for at least 5 minutes before you put it in is perfect. So our Snickerdoodles are in the oven at 400 degrees. I'm going to set my timer for 9 minutes. And while we're doing that, let's whip up our English muffins for tomorrow, which is a really simple recipe. Let's just do it right here. Now you do need to use an active starter for this. So I fed my starter today, lost the bottom of it, when I fed it this morning to make up our dough for our sourdough bread, so it's still nice and active. It just needs to be fed within the last 12 hours, I found. So you can see it's still nice and bubbly on the top, which means it's going to be nice and active. Let me grab and this. And so we need to start with a 1/2 cup of our active starter here. So I always like to give it a little bit of a stir on there, and kind of pops down all those bubbles when you do it. But you want to pop them down and kind of deflate your starter before you measure it out, so that you have an accurate measurement, because if you don't, then you're going to get less starter in there. So we need a 1/2 cup of our active starter.
And when you get a minute, can you go over the ingredients for the cookies?
Yes. So they're a pretty simple recipe. You're going to start with a cup of butter, and then I used 1 1/3 cup of granulated sugar, a 1/3 cup of brown sugar, 1 egg plus a yolk, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. Cream all of that and everything together, and then 2 1/2 cups of flour. Mix it well. Then you're going to mix together cinnamon and sugar. You roll it and bake it. Okay, let me get my dough whisk, because it's easier with a dough whisk than with a spoon. And if you don't know what a dough whisk, it's this crazy little contraption here, but it allows the flour and the dough to pass through instead of like getting stuck on your spoon.
What's the actual name?
A Danish whisk is the
Thank you.
actual name. My husband happens to be Danish, so of course he needs to highlight it.
You have a Danish last name?
I do have a Danish last name, even though I am Swedish. I know, it's a sad burden I have to live with. We're going to add in 1 cup of milk. I prefer to use whole milk because it's a little bit richer, but you know, regular milk, whatnot, you know, skim, 2% will work well. I have never done it with an almond milk or anything like that, so I don't know if that will change it. I do know that at times that can impact it, certain baked goods, but I have never done it with this recipe, so I don't know if it does impact it. And that's one of those things where you really have to trial and error with different ingredients to see if they work, because some things it matters and some things it does not. We're gonna add in a tablespoon of honey, which is really sad because I'm running out of my honey. And this honey is, we got it in when we went to Tuckaleechee Caves, or caverns I should say, which is in Tennessee, and apparently it's the most sensitive seismic spot in the world. And they actually can tell, it's the US government monitors it because they can tell if any country in the world is testing atomic bombs or nuclear bombs from there, because it has such a sensitivity to it. And they test all of the different like earthquakes and everything. It was really cool. It was a really cool cave system. It's huge. But we got this local honey there when we went there over fall break. And now I'm almost out of it, so it makes me sad. I always like to pick up honey whenever we go on these like fun adventures. We got some at the apple orchard, which was the best honey ever because it was so sweet. And then this one from Tuckaleechee Caverns. So we've mixed in our honey, a tablespoon of honey with a half a cup of our discard and a cup of milk. We're gonna add in a teaspoon of salt. Should be around a teaspoon. We'll give that a good stir, and then 3 cups of flour. Now this is going to not be like a dough like a regular sourdough. It's actually going to be more kneadable and more able to work with. So it's a lower hydration dough. Let me grab my flour, which is right here. And we're going to do 3 cups of all-purpose flour. And this is essentially the base to our dough. The only addition that we will add is tomorrow, after we kind of stretch it out and cut it, we place it on cornmeal so that when we toast it up, it has a little bit of a textured grip to it like English muffins have. So 1, 2. It is time for me to refill. I have to grab a second bag because I am just shy. I thought I was going to make it through, but I need so many more. And don't worry, I have mountains of flour. Ugh. I feel like anytime I have another pack of this in my thing. So I have about 20 pounds always on hand because, you know, every sane person needs 20 pounds of flour. We'll put it in here and then we'll fill up this cup because we're going to need some of this for shaping and moving. And always use unbleached flour when you're working with sourdough. The bleaching process kills the natural yeast, which minimizes the amount of rise you'll get with sourdough. So we've got our 3 cups of flour here. I'm going to go in with my dough whisk, and we're going to mix this up until it's nice and incorporated. Again, this is going to be a lower hydration dough than most sourdough, which means it's not going to be as sticky. It actually will be more of a kneadable dough. There you go. And you can see it's already coming together fairly well. So I'm going to pull it off. And then we're going to flip it over and we're going to knead it into a ball for it. And the trick is, and I say this like when I make pasta and certain yeast doughs, the amount of kneading it is going to give you the best stretch and build the best gluten chains in there. So don't skimp out on kneading your dough. It just really forms the elasticity in it, and it's going to give you an end-all product. So yes, it might take you an extra 2 or 3 minutes, but it's going to be worth it in the end. So we're just going to kind of work it all together. And this is a sourdough essentially that you don't need to do our stretch and pulls on. You just knead it. And the nice thing is this is an easy dough. that you can just prep the night before. And after you do your kneading, you cover it and you leave it on the counter until the morning. And then in the morning, you can whip up some homemade fresh sourdough English muffins, which are so much better than anything you can buy at the store. Even my mom, who goes, I normally don't like English muffins, but these are the best things I've ever had. So they are really delicious. Here we go. We're just gonna give it a good knead. And kind of my trick to kneading is when you push, you kind of push and you drag it along the countertop. And that's causing you to kind of stretch and pull those gluten chains inside your dough. And then we like fold it over on top of each other. So you're constantly just breaking it apart and smoothing it out. And that just, again, is just gonna give you a much nicer texture.
You have a question. Do you have a video on how to make a sourdough starter?
Yes, I do. I actually have both a recipe card and a video, and it's actually a collection of videos because it takes about 7 days to get a nice active starter that is ready to make bread. So I do have a collection of it, as well as a tutorial video on how you can make your very own sourdough bread from start to finish, because it is like a 2-day process. Okay, let's go grab those cookies out. We're gonna let this sit. We'll give it a couple more kneads towards the end after we're done shaping up. But our cookies are ready.
And you have a question. Can English muffins be made without sourdough?
You can definitely make them without sourdough. I just think they taste better with sourdough in it. Look at our gorgeous Snickerdoodle cookies. They've got the lovely kind of crinkle on them, and that comes from rolling them in the sugar, and then they kind of pop apart as they bake. But they are gorgeous. You can smell that cinnamon in them. And I find that the sourdough component that we add in here, that discard, just makes them nice and just super soft and chewy. Now these, you want them to sit on your baking sheet for about 5 minutes before transferring them, because the cookies, when you first take them out, they're very soft, but they need to firm up for just a few minutes before transferring. So I'm gonna warn my husband, do not eat them yet, they are very hot. Okay, let's shape up. This is a double batch of my sourdough, so I'm going to shape up 2 loaves to bake up here for tomorrow.
Stephanie sent you a gift.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. We appreciate that a lot.
And you have a question. Are the Snickerdoodles similar to sugar cookies?
Not really. They have some similarities in them, but there is the addition of cream of tartar on there, and then you roll them in a cinnamon sugar mixture. So sugar cookies are very plain. This has the addition of cinnamon in there, which gives a different kind of flavor profile. And their texture is just a little bit different because of that cream of tartar, which is kind of a binder that holds them together a little bit better. So while, yes, you could say they're in the same family, but they're more like cousins instead of like siblings. Here we go. So I'm just kind of coating my Bantam baskets with a good amount of flour, and then I'm just going to dump any extra over there. That prevents it from sticking to the cheesecloth when you are shaping it, or after you shape it and you're ready to bake it up and flip it out. Now, the trick with sourdough, because it is a high hydration dough and it is sticky, just use copious amounts of flour. We're going to let it do its kind of pull. It's always so much fun. And again, this is for 2 of my big loaves. So for a single loaf of this, if I were to divide it in half, I start out with 150 grams of active starter that I fed within 4 to 8 hours. And then I add in about 565 grams of and warm water. Warm water is the key because it's going to allow it to hydrate into the flour better. So you mix the warm water and the sourdough starter together. Then you add in about a tablespoon of salt. Mix that, and then you're going to add 750 grams of unbleached bread flour. And you just do your stretch and folds for, one stretch and fold series every 30 minutes, or like 4 of them, but one session of stretch and folds. And then you just let it sit for another 2 to 4 hours after that until you've got the right kind of poof. And now we're doing our shaping, and this is called laminating. So laminating is when you stretch out your dough nice and big like this. Helps get out any of those kind of bigger air pockets. And then we're just gonna fold it over. And we're gonna shape it up, giving it a nice little roll. And then I like to kind of tuck everything up like this. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna do this one in the round one. I kind of call these my stitches, where I kind of hold them together and crisscross them. So we'll move this in here, and you want your pretty side down, and then you just kind of seal it up like this. And you kind of pull all those in so you have that nice rolled up folded side inside, which gives you this really good crumb and texture in it when you bake. And that's also if you want to add in your little like lamination or your inclusions. So add in just a smidge of our flour over the top, and then all we have to do is cover this, and we'll pop it in the fridge to chill overnight until we're ready to bake it. It can chill in the fridge for up to 3 days. After 3 days, you're gonna lose the structure in your bread, and while it will still taste good when you bake it, it's just gonna deflate. Okay, and we're gonna do the same thing with this one. And this is always when I go to put this one in, always one ends up bigger than the other one because I did not evenly divide it in half. But I don't feel like getting out of scale and measuring them to make sure they're completely equal, because this isn't a bakery, it's just my house. So we're gonna stretch it out. If you wanted to do an inclusion, which is where you add all your little tasty bits, what you would do is you would put them all on here, cheese or raisins or chocolate chips, spices, whatever you wanted. You put them on there, then you'd fold this over again. You put some more right here, and you would roll it up just like that. And that would make sure that they would be spread evenly throughout your loaf in there, so that none are just sinking down to the bottom, so that you have them evenly. Okay, we've got this one. We're gonna put this in here, and then we'll do our stitches. And we'll kind of seal it up, and just make sure when nothing's in it, it's really easy to shape it together without pulling and breaking that outer skin. When you do have an inclusion, you just need to be a little bit more tender with it so that you don't pull and pop some of those inclusion bits out of the base of it. Now, this part that you see up top is not going to be the pretty part when you bake. When you flip it over, that flour basket, that's going to give you the pretty part that you're going to score and make and bake and everything. Let me wash my hands real quick. We're going to give our sourdough English muffins one last knead, and then we'll be able to send you off. So I always like to do 2 kneads on this, a small little bit between it, because after the first one, that dough has had a chance to hydrate and it's a lot more elasticy. So you're just going to go through, and we're just going to knead it a few more times. And you can see it is already so much smoother than it was 5 minutes ago. And that is simply because the flour has hydrated. It soaked up that milk in there and that starter, and it is really just rehydrating it. Now, when I go to kind of stretch this out in the morning, and cut my English muffins out using like a little 2-inch cutter because I like smaller English muffins, but you can go up to 3 inches. It will have doubled in size because again, it's going to puff up. So this little ball will be this much bigger. Okay, guys, we are done shaping up and kneading our English muffin dough. So we'll pop this on here. We'll leave it in there, we'll cover it up, and we'll let it sit on the counter until tomorrow. We'll cover our 2 loaves that we have shaped up here, and we'll pop them in the fridge for their cold proofing. And then, of course, we have our cookies here, our beautiful, perfect sourdough snickerdoodle muffins with cinnamon in the dough and then rolled in cinnamon sugar for the perfect treat.
That's a cookie.
It is a cookie. Did I call it a
Muffin.
That's because my brain's crazy. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page, search for what we made. So we've got our English muffins and our snickerdoodles, and you can watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking and baking gear. I've got my mixers, my bowls, I've got my sourdough, all my sourdough stuff in there as well. But I have all that in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.